Summarize what you've learned about food chains. Living things get energy to live and grow from food. A food chain shows how energy passes from one organism to another as food. First, a plant uses the sun's energy to make its own food. Next, an animal, such as a gopher, eats the plant. Then, another animal, such as a weasel, eats that gopher. Energy passes from the sun to the plant, to the gopher, to the weasel. Green plants in a food chain are called producers. They are called this because they make, or produce, their own food. Animals are called consumers. Animals cannot make their own food. They must eat, or consume, plants or other animals for food. Most food chains are similar in a few ways. Sunlight is at the beginning of nearly all food chains. A plant, or producer, is next in the chain. Then an animal eats the plant. Next, an animal eats the plant eater. The chain continues until tiny living things break down organisms and return nutrients to the soil. These tiny living things are decomposers. The nutrients they return to the soil are used by new plants, and the chain begins again. Herbivores are animals that eat mainly plants. They are also known as primary consumers because they are the first consumers in a food chain. Examples of herbivores include caterpillars, chipmunks, goats, and elephants. Herbivores can be found in most environments on Earth. They live in oceans, forests, deserts, and grasslands. They even live in the cold Arctic environment that surrounds the North Pole. Herbivores live in every environment where plants grow. Herbivores can be food for other animals. An animal that is hunted by another animal for food is called prey. An animal that hunts another animal for food is called a predator. Both predator and prey are consumers because they both must eat food to survive. Animals that eat other animals are called carnivores. Examples of carnivores include cats that eat mice and hawks that eat other birds. Frogs that eat insects and snakes that eat rabbits are also carnivores. In some cases, carnivores eat other carnivores. Hawks, for example, often eat snakes. Herons eat frogs, and lizards eat spiders. Some animals, such as bears, seem to eat everything. They eat such living things as fish, berries, leaves, mice, and squirrels. Are bears carnivores because they eat animals? Are they herbivores because they eat plants? In fact, bears are called omnivores. An omnivore is an animal that eats both plants and animals. Other examples of omnivores include raccoons, pigs, wasps, and flies. Most people are omnivores too. People eat from a wide mix of plant and animal food groups. Both omnivores and carnivores are called secondary consumers. Decomposers break down organisms that are no longer living. They break them down into nutrients that can be used again by plants. There are many types of decomposers. Each breaks down a special type of organism. For example, earthworms break down plants only. Plant-like organisms, called fungi, break down rotting wood and other plant parts. Still other decomposers break down what is left of dead animals. Decomposers that consume dead matter are also consumers. Decomposers work together to break down organisms completely. The once living material may become part of the soil. This material adds nutrients to soil that help plants to grow well. Now the food chain can start all over again. Every environment has its own food chains. However, the same basic parts of each are the same. Here are some examples of food chains you might find in California. A pond food chain might start with a plant-like producer called algae. These algae float in the water collecting sunlight. They are food for young mayflies, which eagerly gobble them up. The mayflies swarm near the surface of the water and become food for sunfish. The sunfish are then eaten by the blue heron. Finally, decomposers break the heron down after it dies. In the California desert, seed pods of the mesquite tree are food for harvester ants. The ants live in large colonies of thousands. The ants become food for the horned lizard. These lizards, in turn, are eaten by larger animals such as coyotes. A food chain is made of producers, consumers, and decomposers. Consumers can be herbivores, carnivores, or omnivores. Decomposers break down organisms that are no longer living. What is at the beginning of most food chains? The sun is at the beginning of most food chains. It passes energy to producers, such as plants. Are the following statements true or false? A producer is an organism that makes its own. A carnivore is an animal that eats both plants and animals. Describe how a tree, a lion, and a zebra would pass along energy in a food chain. How do decomposers help an environment? Raccoons and wasps are blank. A. Omnivores. B. Herbivores. C. Carnivores. D. Decomposers. Choose an environment. Write about a food chain that might exist there. Include information about producers, consumers, and decomposers.